The movie opens at the city of Hatra of Iraq. There was extensive digging to uncover what was happening. Father Marin was also involved in digging with other people. During digging, they find an amulet which belonged to demon Pazuzu. Pazuzu was a powerful demon who brings hotness and dryness in summer, and brings a locust swarm storm on rainy days. These locusts were huge in number and destroy all the crops by attacking them. And this brings adverse effects. People die of starving, and most adverse effect was that poverty increased rapidly. Pazuzu had a very big enemy named Lamashtu. Lamashtu is also demon himself. Lamashtu does bad is that he makes damage to mother and her children's. He takes children's away from their mother and sucks their blood. That's why people take Pazuzu's support to save mother and children from Lamashtu. Although Pazuzu is also a demon, but people use it for their safety. Then Father Marin was shown who reach at a point where he finds Pazuzu's statue. Two dogs were fighting there, which means two demons were fighting Pazuzu and Lamashtu. Now we see Chris McNeil, who was playing the actress role in a movie based on Student by director Burke. McNeil is the mother of a 12-year-old daughter named Regan. She is a well-known actress. She had money, fame, and every luxury of life. In the next scene, both mother and daughters were shown together. McNeil finds an Ouija board in her daughter's toys and inquires daughter about board. She replies, "I often play with this board." She says this game can't be played alone. Regan replies, "I don't play this game alone. In fact, Captain Howdy also plays with me." McNeil asks her to play together and says, "You should tell me how to play this." When she tries to play, the board moves away by itself. She laughs at it, and she says in that, "I think you don't want to play Ouija board with me." Her daughter replies that not me, but Captain Howdy wants that you should not play. McNeil doesn't take her seriously and takes it fun. Then McNeil was shown asleep. The phone bell rings and she wakes up. McNeil sees that her daughter was sleeping with her. She asks, "Why are you sleeping here?" Her daughter replies that my bed was shaking. That's why it was difficult to sleep. McNeil doesn't give importance to this and moves out of the room. Chris hears some voices from the room which she heard before also. She moves to upper floor but couldn't find anything there. Chris takes Regan to the doctor. When doctor sees her, Regan misbehaves with doctor. She uses bad words about the doctor. Doctor tells Chris that her daughter has nerve problem. That's why her tone is loud. Doctor also says, Regan's father doesn't live with her, neither he has contacted her. This could be the reason why she is under tension. Following that, Father Karas was shown whose mother had been admitted to a mental institution by her brothers. And his mother gets much upset about this. His mother is an old lady with fractured feet who doesn't allow doctor to treat her. And that's why she was admitted here. Father Karas wanted to move her in a big hospital, but he couldn't afford all this. Then his mother dies. He becomes very much sad. Chris arranges a party at her home that her daughter appears there. She addresses a guest and says her father lives in upper portion of this house. She urinates while standing there and people get shocked seeing all this. Chris gives her bath and makes her sleep at her bed. When Chris is coming down, she hear loud noises from her daughter room. When she reached there, she witnessed that her daughter bed is shaking. Regan starts shouting. Chris was seeing all this, but she was unable to understand that what is happening. Chris takes her again to the doctors, and the doctors perform a slew of tests on her. But all of her tests were completely normal. Doctor says she is fine. She has no problem. One day when Regan is sleeping, something start to pull her up and down. Regan was shouting and saying, "Save me, otherwise I will die." But Chris couldn't do anything. She immediately calls the doctor. When doctor arrived, Regan attacks the doctor, but somehow they managed to give her some sleeping injection. One day when Chris come back from the doctor after the Regan appointment, she knows that her director died after falling from the rooftop, and Burke was along with Regan at that time. When Chris entered the house, she saw that her daughter was coming down from the stairs in awkward position, and blood was coming out of her mouth. Chris gets terrified. Doctors and psychiatrists were unable to understand her problem, as they did many tests on her which didn't examine any disease. All tests were normal. Everyone advises Chris to take her to father for exorcist. Then we see William comes to meet Regan, who was handling Burke's case. They ask Chris of that night. He also says that many strange things happened in Burke's death. He says his neck was turned to the back side. That was depicting that he was murdered by some demon. After William leaves, shouting voices were coming out of Regan's room. When Chris reaches out there, she gets shocked that her daughter injured herself. And she was constantly injuring herself. When Chris tried to stop Regan, she attacked her. When the servants hear the noise, they come at the spot when they try to enter the room. The sofa cart moves by itself and covers the door tightly. And the cupboard placed in the room moves towards Chris. But Chris moves at the right time and saves herself. Her daughter turns her head completely to the back, which was weird to see. Regan speaks in the voice of Brooke and says, "Look, what your daughter has done to me." When Chris listens that she understands that Burke was killed by her daughter who is possessed. Chris meets Father Karras. And she requests him to exorcist her daughter. Father Karras denies at first, then agrees upon her insistence. When Father Karras approaches Regan, that demon was highly contented over her. And Regan's demon irritates Karras over his mother's death. He thinks that Regan never knew about my mother's death. Then he finds out that Chris was right. But the problem was that permission was needed for exorcists from the church. On the other hand, William is spying on Chris because he thinks Chris is responsible for Burke's death. Father Karras finds that hell was written on Regan's body. Father Karras listens to the recording of Regan naming his father, Marin. Karras seeks permission from the church about exorcist. But the church decides to assign an experienced priest who had prior experience. And here the church decides to send Father Marin along with Father Karras. When Father Marin reaches out there, he hears of Regan shouting loudly. Father Marin told Karras that they should start exorcist immediately. As the process proceeds further, Regan starts to shout loudly. She abuses her mother and Father Marin badly. And her bed starts shaking badly and gets upward in the air in front of them. But they don't stop exorcist. They continue it. Then demon moves the things with his powers. The demon abuses both of them badly, but they didn't stop and continued. When they were at the last phase, Father Marin saw the statue of demon Pazuzu. The demon is trying to stop the processor by emotional torturing them. At some point, Father Karras couldn't control himself. Father Marin asks him to go outside. Then Father Marin starts it alone. After a while, Karras again comes to the room. Then he finds that Father Marin was killed by that demon. Father Karras gets angry and says to demon to enter his body and leave Regan. The demon does the same. He leaves Regan and enters Karras's body. Then, in order to undo the demon's damage, Father Karras sacrifices his life. Then Father Karras's friend appears over there and helps Karras leaving this world. After some time, we see Regan comes back to normal. She has forgotten everything that happened to her. After a few days, Regan and her mother leave that location.